This Monday, in Mali's capital, the United Nations flag taken down for the last time. It marks the end of a 10-year deployment of peacekeepers in the wake of the French-led campaign that back in 2013 stopped jihadists from swooping on Bamako. From a high of 15,000 blue helmets and UN police, MINUSMA now down to a little more than 3,000 with the rest to go before the end of the year. The falling out between the UN and the junta in Mali follows a similar feud that led to the departure of French forces last year. With us, Leonardo Santos Simão, Special Representative for the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, UNOWAS. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
You're just back from a regional summit in Abuja. More on that in a moment. But first, your reaction to, I know it's a symbolic ceremony, lowering the flag in Bamako, the UN flag. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's at the end of one type of relationship between the UN and Mali. And this happens at the request of the Malian government, which was made in July. However, the relationship between the two entities will continue through the normal channels and of agencies, programs, and funds of the United Nations.
Locals concerned, saying that it's a hasty departure and they're in danger because these are areas where UN forces had patrolled, in some cases lost their lives fighting against these jihadist insurgents. Is that concern justified?
Yes, absolutely. They are justified because the MINUSMA was providing also security to the population and also to other entities operating in that country. So their departure will leave behind a vacuum, which will not be easy to fill at short term.
It's part of what we've seen, a broader trend of those three countries in the so-called Three Borders region, Mali, Burkina Faso, Niger, coup leaders who say we don't need the French, former colonial power, we don't need the international community, we don't need regional powers to help us solve our problems.
Well, it goes beyond the Sahel region, because we saw the same requests from the Congo, DRC, but also from Sudan. So here there is a mismatch between what are the expectations of the entities, local entities, including communities, living under security threats and attacks all the time. They expect the United Nations to be a more protective mission on one hand, but also by conducted counter-insurgency activities, which is not in their mandate. And therefore, there is this sort of disappointment because of the expectations happen to that. So now there is this discussion about adopting other forms of combating terrorism, but using different formats. And the African Union is promoting the African-led missions on that.
What do you think of the fact that all three of these countries have reached out to Russia? Its leadership has been in the region just last week.
Yes, we talked with them. When they talked with them, they said that, well, they're not having support, particularly from the regional organization, which...
Are the Russians going to do better?
Well, I think it's more a measure of despair than anything else, because the results so far, well, they're not showing that the results are much better.
Now, you're just back from that ECOWAS, that West African states summit in the Nigerian capital, Abuja, this weekend, one where Liberia's outgoing president, George Weah, received a standing ovation for recognizing defeat in a close presidential election. That's a rare bright spot in a region that we've talked about, those coups that have happened throughout the Sahel. More recently, we've had armed unrest in Sierra Leone and Guinea-Bissau.
I would like to reiterate the imperative of the region to continue to re-engage under the military rule and basis of realistic and short transition plan that can deliver democracy and good governance. No alternative.
So no alternatives to democracy and good governance, says Bola Tinubu. However, it feels like what's emerging from that ECOWAS summit is a deal with the coup leaders in Niger. Let the deposed President Mohamed Bazoum, who's been under house arrest, go, and in exchange, we'll start to normalize ties. Your thoughts?
I have a somehow different reading of the situation. I think if you look back before the summit of the situation, there was a stalemate between ECOWAS and these countries. So there was no dialogue, which means that there were not discussions about how to solve the existing problem was not there. So what the summit did, in my view, was precisely to open the way for this dialogue to be resumed on one hand, but also taking measures which can help these countries to fight terrorism. That's why the decision to revive the African Standby Force has been taken also. So that on one hand, dialogue between ECOWAS and these countries is going to be resumed, which means that they are going to discuss practical ways and modalities of resolving the problems on one hand, but also the modalities of assisting these countries to fight terrorism through African-led forces also is likely to happen.
But after first condemning, rejecting, it's a normalization of ties that you're describing.
Rejection of a changing of constitution by illegal force is a norm, because countries, and in particular those who are members of ECOWAS, they are bound to guide their political life through democratic means. So when these rules are violated, the first reaction is condemnation. But at the same time, the organization is not blind to the existing realities. It's necessary to find political ways or practical ways to solve them. So that's why the resumption of dialogue also is in that logic of finding practical ways to solve the problems.
So we talk a lot about problems and coup leaders and people who go outside of the written norms. What happened with George Weah? Why did that go right?
Well, he did that, but was also the political environment in Sierra Leone was...
in Liberia.
In Liberia was different. It's true that elections happen within certain level of tensions, but there was also a lot of support to the country, and particularly in the runoff of the elections, working with the two candidates to accept the results of the elections in first place. But
who worked with them? Was that the UN? Was it the US?
It was a consortium of partners from the ECOWAS, led by ECOWAS, but also included the UN, but also the all diplomatic community existing in the country, but also internal political forces within the country.
And in neighboring Sierra Leone right now, you have the former president under house arrest after recent violence, what the government calls an attempted coup. Your thoughts on that?
It's a setback also, because elections took place amid some tensions, and the opposition did not accept the results of the elections. But it's through the joint work of ECOWAS, Commonwealth, and the local diplomatic community was able to lead the parties to sign a peace agreement on that. But there is this problem also of the relationship between the current government and the former president. But also on that, ECOWAS is going to work on them to find solutions for that.
All right, through dialogue, Leonardo Santos Simão, so many thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Stay with us, there's much more to come here on France 24. More news plus the day's business and sports.